the last three were pretty verse heavy. These ones are not as verse heavy, Bible verse heavy, even though they're definitely in there. But there's stuff to look at. So basically, tonight, next week, the week after, and the week after are going to be topics that you may have touched on in your life, that you may relate to in your life. And then what you need to do, which is why I did it first, is go back and use the forgiveness, the vows, the judgments, the vows, and break it and pray through things like this. And so we're just trying to, Pastor Peter, my old pastor, used to call the class possessing your vessel with honor from Thessalonians, and that's what we want to do. We want to possess our vessel with honor. And in order to do that, we have to try to be the healthiest version that we can be, acknowledging that in that pursuit of health and wholeness and restoration is going to come through the power of the Holy Spirit, through Jesus and through his power. So tonight, we're going to talk about performance orientation. And this affects a lot of people, and you may not think it's a big issue, but when we start diving into it, you'll begin to see, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm subject to this, or because of what I've done, I've placed that upon others, and it's just not a healthy way to run. So what's performance orientation? You can see the little picture there. No matter how much you do, you can never get the approval or blessing from another. Have you ever known someone that's been in that place, or maybe you've been in that place? Doesn't matter what you do, it's just like that carrot that's dangled in front of the animal. No matter how hard you run at that thing, you just can never get it. And that's a perfect example of performance orientation. And what happens if you fall into performance orientation, never being able to get the approval or blessing from another? It can lead to frustration, it can lead to anger, and these things will need to be released through forgiveness, which we've talked about in previous weeks. All right, so performance orientation is a big one, and we'll begin to see it here. Okay, performance orientation can manifest itself when you put your identity in what you do. Your identity needs to be in who he says you are and not what your job is, not what another has labeled you as. All right, so these are things with performance orientation. Just in my line of what I do on a daily basis, being a senior pastor, you've heard me many times in the last 7 years say, I don't care if you call me Jeremy. I don't care if you call me Pastor Jeremy. I don't think it's rude if you call me Jeremy. I love it. I'll honor your honor if you call me Pastor Jeremy. And the reason why I say that is because Rachel and I, before we came here, when we worked in New York, Rachel was a part of running a pastoral network of about 400 plus pastors in New York. And when we were in Connecticut, I want to say 250, or maybe around 400, 250, 300 pastors in Connecticut. So Rachel and I have been a part of pastoral events, being in 2 hub churches. And we began to learn very, very early the amount of pastors that put their identity in the title, and it becomes who they are. And to the point where when pastors retire, they don't know who they are, or they have like a midlife crisis, or they kind of fall apart because their whole life they've been pastor. That's been their name, right? And then when they retire, I'm no longer a pastor, so what am I? Right? And so that's why, it's not a big deal. Like I said, if you call me Pastor Jeremy, I'm all about it. If you call me Jeremy, I'm all about it. Because at the end of the day, Jeremy is my name. Being a pastor right now is the calling and the position the Lord's placed me in. But in the same way, you have to relate that to yourself. You have to make sure that your identity is grounded in who you are. And at the entry-level foundation for all of us, I don't know if I like entry-level, first level of understanding for all of us, each one of us in this room is a son and a daughter of the Most High God if you've received Jesus. And everything in your life flows from that. So whether it's not, I'm not trying to have some cryptic message, so don't worry. So like if I all of a sudden stop being a pastor tomorrow, obviously that would hurt. I wouldn't like it. It would be growing pains within my family, within myself. But ultimately, I would trust in the Lord, because my identity is not in being a pastor. Your identity is not in being a teacher or whatever your job title is. My identity is being a son of the Lord and pursuing hard after God. And the more I pursue that identity, I need to pursue that identity even more so than being a father, being a husband, being a friend. Because if I pursue these over my identity, it's just all out of order. And why I said that entry point needs to be the identity in who he says you are. And each one of us here is loved. We are called, we are chosen, we have a plan, we have a purpose. And the way I like to look at life, like I said, I hope I'm a pastor till I die, but only the Lord knows that. I don't know that. But at our best, everything in life that comes into our sphere of influence is an assignment. So right now, I consider me being a senior pastor as an assignment given by the Lord. And I hope that assignment goes for a very long time, right? But that assignment, I'll only be successful in that assignment if I'm successful in pursuing my rightful identity as a son of the Most High, and vice versa with all you. If you want to shine in the areas of influence, it has to be from that pivotal point that you have been born again and are now a child of God, right? So let's do 3 huge ways that performance orientation will manifest itself physically. Father, son, or daughter, or mother, son, daughter, whatever you want to put in it. We'll just use father, son. Son does well and behaves, he'll get the father's attention and love. If he doesn't do well or behave, the father will withhold love, withhold time, withhold affirmation. Right? And this can go any which way. Father, son, daughter, son, mother, daughter. And we can get into this rat race, especially if things get busy, where attention, affection, affirmation, all these things take place if you are doing well. And if you're not doing well, then it's withheld. And you can see it in bigger situations or more prominent situations when there's more than one sibling in the house. So if I had 2 sons, one of them's excelling in school and doing well in school, not getting in trouble, it would be easy to naturally gravitate over to that son and be like, hey, son, you're doing great, great, great. And then the son that's maybe not doing as well in school, struggling, it's more rebuke, and you withhold, whether it's intentional or unintentional, you withhold that affirmation. And so those are places that we really have to watch for it. And performance orientation is huge, especially in the household. You have to make sure that no one in your house, husband, wife, son, daughter, whoever, sibling, no one in the house has to work for attention, has to work for affirmation, or has to work for affection. Right? And that just can't be. You have to go through different avenues to try and build a family, and withholding those 3 should never happen. What's another way? A boss to a worker, or a pastor to a congregant, right? Do you have to do everything the boss wants you to do perfectly, and then you're the golden one, but you miss something or don't live up to that standard of perfection, then you are punished emotionally so that you will never do that again. Unfortunately, I wish to say that never happened in churches. I've seen it with my own eyes. Again, not by Pastor Peter. I've never actually seen him do that, and I'm not just covering for him because he's passed. I've never seen him do that. But Rachel and I were a part of a church where we'd see people come in there that were trying their best and didn't live up to the mark, and it was just a brutal beatdown of words. And people just leave half the person they were when they came in. Right? But what does that do? It either does 2 things. It's either you're smart enough in that moment, you're like, hey, I'm not going to take this and run. Or what does it do? I got to do better. Next time I got to do it. And you start to get into this strive thing, and everything that you do is to try and please the boss, or please the pastor, or please whoever it is in your life, right? So that's another big way it manifests. If it's a pastor, even in a pastor situation, because I know that especially in church meetings like these, unfortunately, church hurt is not far off. But yeah, if you don't agree, you'll be removed. If I catch you with a drink, you're removed. If I hear a story about how you're struggling, or found out you haven't been reading your Bible, or you miss a couple of church services, removed. Right? No. It's like, that is so damaging. And we're going to find out later, which I'll link back to that. Why do pastors do that? The same thing could be said about parents, is because you don't want your reputation to be wrapped up in the way that a congregant or a child acts. And so what do? Then you just start heavy loading on them. Don't ever do this again. So you're trying to save yourself. But that's actually not biblical, and it's not the way that Jesus lived it. And so these are 2 big areas, 3 ways that it can manifest yourself. Oh yeah, sorry, one more here. If you don't serve enough in a church, if you don't support my vision or my standards, you're removed, right? That's not the way it is. The church was never supposed to be built around one man. That's a big mistake, and it's built around Jesus Christ and a team of leaders. That's how it is. The 3rd way could be husband and wife. I need a man that can. I need a wife that can. Right? And you start saying these lines and these words when you come into marital friction at all. And then all of a sudden you start throwing these lines out. And what happens when you come into any type of, the Italian word is agita, any type of just agita friction like that, when you come into any of these things, what happens? When it comes into any of these 3 categories, what happens? You withhold attention, affection, communication, you back up, right? And you're just kind of like, why is it that the natural cause or the natural reaction to any type of conflict is, we usually say this, I'm just going to take a couple steps back and see if this kind of fixes itself, right? We all know that. No, it's not going to mean it might fix itself, but it won't fix itself well. You'll be back to that same crossroads in a little while if you don't actually step in and be a part of what God's called us to be, that restoration. So right here, when you're coming into that area of strife or friction, if you start dropping lines like, I need a man that can do this, or I need a wife or a woman that can do this, right? You start producing these comments that can produce fear, and fear is like, if I don't do this, then I'm going to lose them, and so then you start doing it. That's performance orientation. And so these three areas right here are all ways that performance orientation manifests, and maybe to a degree, within the family, within the workplace, within the church, within relationships. So those are the three ways it manifests. Maybe you're looking at this and you're like, oh my goodness, like I've been there. I've been afraid of losing something, so I've gone so gung-ho into making sure I don't lose it that I've run into that circle of striving. And striving never really leads you to life. It just doesn't work. If fear is being used to motivate, it might work short term, but will be extremely damaging in the long run, right? You see that particularly in a lot of places, but you see that in households, right? Father and mother put a lot of fear tactics into the kids. The kids get old enough to taste their own little bit of freedom, and what happens? Gone. And then that relationship is severed. And it takes a lot to heal a relationship if it ends that way. You have to work more because you're not in the home, and it's hard. So if fear is being used to motivate, it will work short term. So we as Christians need to understand this. So here's the question as you're going through this tonight. We as Christians will be the second part. The first part is the things that happen in your life, or the cycles that maybe you find yourself striving in your life. Is the source of that some sort of fear? Because if fear is one of the building blocks to your motivation, then that needs to be cleaned out. Someone needs to be forgiven, judgments have to be broken, and inner vows have to be renounced in there. Because fear, unless it's a fear of the Lord, which is different than a fear of losing something, but a fear or a reverence and awesomeness of God is different than the fear I'm talking about. But if fear is a motivator or a building block to the structure of your life, like this is where it gets hard. And like I said before, you got to go back to that block and you got to pull it out, and you have to bring healing and put a new one in. But sometimes when you pull blocks out, like Jenga, the whole thing comes down. Because you've built it on a bad foundation, and things crumble because everything in your life is connected to a fear-based motivator. In this case, it would be a fear-based motivator. The biggest thing to help you combat performance orientation is a revelation on the Father's love for you. You don't perform to earn love. That's already been given. And here's one of our Bible verses for tonight. 1 John 4:18. Love never brings fear. For fear is always related to punishment. But love's perfection drives the fear of punishment far from our hearts. Whoever walks constantly afraid of punishment has not reached love's perfection. And so the hard part about this is that's just even related to relationships, right? And not that I'm just going to say things not being judgy, right? But well, I don't, because they're my kids, and so I can't say anything. This is stuff I got, right? I can't talk about here. When you have relationships, let's just say this. The overall mindset of the average man and woman today is walking there's a lot of crippling motives in people's mindsets. What happens when there's crippling motives? Then you come into places where you're going to start using fear tactics to keep people in line. If you don't do this, I'm going to leave. If you don't do that, whatever, or you're going to think I'm stupid or whatever, or this or that, right? And the hard part is you're like, well, what am I supposed to do in a situation like this? That's a really hard scenario. But we need to understand if fear is being used over you, or if you're using fear, you are in an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy situation, an unhealthy church, an unhealthy environment. And that's just not the way it is. And unfortunately, sometimes as Christians, we have to, not all our bosses are going to be Christians. We're going to get into workplaces where the boss may use this, but instead of turning around, if you feel that God has called you to that place and you're like, I have a boss that's using fear tactics over me, what are you going to be aware of in that moment? You're going to be aware of, hey, this guy right here is not operating under a healthy system, and I'm going to start praying for him and asking the Lord to break through in his life, if he's calling you to that place. If he's not calling you to that place, you may feel the Lord release you to leave. Just because you don't like it or feel offended, that's not the Lord saying, hey, it's your time to go. You actually have to get into that place of prayer and be like, Lord, where are you calling me to? But we have to begin to look at our lives here. I'm not going to look at situations. And are things in our life today because fear has been set over us? Or is there an insecurity in us that wants to keep people in play, and so that we use fear to keep people in line in our own life? Either one of those ways, we have to go back, because we begin to realize if we are called to walk in love, just as our Father is in love, then love's perfection drives out punishment. And that's why the church made a terrible mistake for so long, preaching hellfire and brimstone, because you literally scare people into the kingdom, and that's not a real relationship with God. Your relationship with God should not start by fear. When Rachel and I were in New York, there was a lady that came in and she used fear tactics all over people and basically had them like right up at hell's doorstep and like, do you want to go in here? Right? Not literally, but, and they're like, no, no, no. And so they pray the prayer, right? And then she would come in, and Rachel made a comment one night. I remember where we were in the living room of that individual's house. And Rachel said, I don't really think the Lord wants you to use fear of God's punishment as a way to bring people into the kingdom. And she's like, well, I don't really care how they get in there. If they're saved, they're saved. But are they? If you've encountered fear, Bible says God is love. God is not fear. So if you built a relationship off fear, then that relationship is not with God. God can heal that. God sees that people are doing these things, and God can break through the damage of people and reveal his love to them, right? So that I'm not saying that if you came into the kingdom because you were afraid of going to hell, that you're not going to heaven. I'm not saying that, because God can redeem moments. But what I'm saying is that's not the way that God wants us to bring people into his kingdom. Right? And so these are hard issues, right? God's going to take care of you. And it really comes to a trust issue. And I'm telling you this because I've prayed it myself, so I would never ask you to pray things that I haven't prayed, but there have been seasons in my life that I didn't understand, and I literally prayed these words. Rachel knew it. Prayed them multiple times in my life. Lord, I don't understand, but I trust that you are good. And just as that verse would come to my mind as I was praying through these things, I would remember how David commanded his spirit to praise the Lord, or his soul to praise the Lord. Sometimes I command my soul in those seasons, I've done it, to trust in God because I know that he's good. Even though I don't see it right now, I'm going to trust in God because I know that he's good. So we have to really think of this. We need to make sure that we are in environments to the best of our ability. It's not always possible. I get that, especially if you're a student with a teacher or whatever. It's not always possible. But to the best of our ability, we need to make sure that we have our place in a relationship where we're not trying to be ruled by fear, and we don't try to rule others by fear. It's just not kingdom. Galatians 1:10. Obviously, Paul says, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. That is a huge line. And this isn't meant to condemn everyone, but that's a question we all got to ask ourselves. In the day-to-day busyness of my life, who ultimately am I about to please? Because if you're about to please people over God, what's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to hit a crossroad. It's going to happen where you're going to have to choose acceptance of this individual, but unfortunately, when that comes, denial of your morals, or denial of the Christian walk, the way you were supposed to walk. And that's why this verse here is so important. And so I want to tie these two together. Love brings about fear. Perfect love drives out the fear of punishment far from our hearts, and then come into this place that we need to be living our life pleasing God, being a servant to God, Jesus being my master, as opposed to other people being my master. And I'm going to get to that in a second, what that looks like more here in a second. If you're trying to win the approval of people, it will bring you to an unhealthy place very, very quickly, and will become a distraction to you as a follower of Jesus. Performance orientation doesn't mean right here you stop serving and doing your best. right? We are talking about putting to death tonight, like that one little piece you got to take out that you realized, oh my goodness, it's a fear block. You got to put to death that thing. You got to remove it and put a new one in. But put to death that situation. Pray through forgiving that person that put that into your life. And it doesn't mean you just stop doing it. Like you don't just back up from the table, right? What we are doing here is we are switching our mode from performing, you have to do it, as serving, you want to do it. Right? Which is why now when you understand performance orientation, it really gets you into that place when slavery was allowed, even in the Bible. What does Paul tell the slaves to do? He said, serve your masters as if you're serving the Lord, right? Like what? Like this is wrong. This is 100% wrong. And our minds are just like, hey, but if you can come into the place of being a servant, and I believe that's the answer to the riddle and that command that Paul's writing to the people. If you can serve someone as Jesus served someone, then you're not under their authority anyways. I mean, you are to a degree, yes, the reality of it. But if do you understand, like look at that deeper layer there. And it really pushes you from saying, Lord, I'm doing this to serve you. So again, if you have a boss or a spouse or something that's used fear tactics, spouse, you want to work through that issue. A boss, you got to ask the Lord, is this where you've planted me? And if no, then you're like, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust you for that next door. If yes, it's like, okay, Lord, I'm going to choose to forgive that boss, and I want you to renew the right spirit within me so I can begin to walk in health. Okay. These things I'm about to list can be evidence of performance orientation. Please note that I'm saying evidence, not fact, but it could be a sign. People pleasing, right? That's evidence. If I offend them, they won't like me. If a friendship is that fickle, it was never a friendship to begin with. They got something going on with them, and it isn't Christ. Right? Probably a judgment or vow. So what's our people-pleasing desire? I mean, obviously I want people to like me. I mean, I think everyone wants everyone to like them. That's not what I'm talking about here. But when your whole life, when your whole action, when you're stepping into a new place, and the only thing that you can think of is I need to be liked. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, no one wants to go into a place and be like, have everyone look at you and know that you're not wanted, right? So that's not what I'm talking about here. I mean, I like liking people, and I like people liking me. It's just how it is. But not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to like me, right? And it's fine. Like, I'm fine with that. Not like, I don't need you, fine. But like, I'm fine with that. I'm well aware that in this earth, no matter how hard I try, there will be people that don't like me. It just is what it is. As long as I have good accountability around me and I can present things to my friends that will give me real answers and be like, hey, Jeremy, maybe you missed up on this one. Or, hey, no, that's not a you issue. You have to have those things in place. So people-pleasing, that can be evidence of performance orientation. Ask yourself that. Are you afraid of what people think? Does that motivate you in your responses, in your actions? Overachieving. Now, overachieving isn't bad, but I'm not saying every one of these is 100%. If you have it, you have performance orientation. But you have to understand if you're always overachieving, why are you overachieving? And the answer will usually be because you're afraid that if you don't, someone's going to take your spot, or you're going to be overlooked, or the affection or the kind words from your boss, pastor, parent, whatever, are going to be dried up, are going to drive up. Workaholism. You have to produce results. Again, why? It's not always performance orientation. Sometimes it's just workaholism can almost become an addiction, right? Like going to the gym. I mean, it's because you just have to as a part to like to. You have to produce results. Why? Again, the question is in that parentheses. Why do you have to produce results like this? Why does your whole life drive to get there? Oh, well, because when I didn't do it at home, my dad used to yell at me. I never saw him. He never told me he loved me, but when I did produce results, Dad was always like, oh, well done, son, well done. And so you just get in this habit. The way to get affirmation is you have to overachieve. These are things we have to break. How many of you knew this was going to go this deep? Codependence, right? Never saying no. Do you look in your life and find out you never say no? Again, ask yourself, why? Why do I never say no? If I never say no, is it because I'm afraid of how someone's going to view me? Then you have performance orientation, my friend. And we need to pray through that and find out, wait, why do I always say no? Where was that affection? Where was that love? Where was that security shut off in my past? And then that will lead you to the answer to number 4. Underachieving. And then you're like, well, Jeremy, you're just picking random thoughts. No, I'm not. So others' expectations are not disappointed. This one is huge. You try to meet someone else's expectation of you that you sabotage your life to do it, right? So if someone has a certain thing of you and you're able to do one thing, but they expect another, then you will do what they expect you to do and not step into what you can do because you don't want to lose that person's approval of you, right? And it can even come down to someone who's has an identity of the class clown, for example, right? If I don't become the class clown, then who am I? If I don't become the one that's always dropping the gloves on the hockey team, are they still going to like me, right? Like underachieving, purposely going lower because you have a reputation and you don't want to lose that reputation. So you constantly sell yourself short and never step up into the place you can be because you're afraid if you do it, you'll lose someone. Or if you're in a relationship and you're like, hey, I really want to go for my master's, but they said if I don't have enough time for them, then they're going to dump me. Well, dump them first. No, I'm just kidding. Right? But what I'm saying is then you underachieve. You never shoot for your goals. Why? Because it's fear. It's fear. I mean, again, there's a healthy relationship where you got to figure things out and be like, hey, can we do this as a couple? It doesn't make sense. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all these being fear-based responses instead of healthy situation scenarios, right? And so my example could go both ways. It could be, hey, let's talk this through. Does it make sense for us? No. Or it could be the other way of a fear-based reality. Being a perfectionist, again, that's probably falls under the same one of being no. You don't just become a perfectionist. Why do you become a perfectionist? Because what you did growing up, you were never good enough, right? So I'm going to be good enough. I'm going to do this the best. I'm going to be the best. Why? Because someone said, you'll never do it. You're an idiot. You're this. You're that. You'll never amount to this. You'll never do this. And you just hop on that wheel and you run as fast as you can. And everything in your life has to be perfect. And when it's not perfect, your whole life crumbles, right? Performance orientation. Not allowing for mistakes, even with others. Why? And I alluded to this earlier. Because others can be a reflection on you, right? Parents struggling with choices that their kids make, they feel that it reflects on them. And yes, it can reflect on them. But let me tell you something as parents. If you do the best you can, every kid still has free will, right? Like I can look back and I had some tough spills in my life, but I can tell you my parents were always there for me. They always showed me love. They showed up to everything that I needed them for. They never withheld love from me. They never withheld affection from me. So I wouldn't, that was my own free will. And unfortunately, I gave my parents a bad rep for the way I lived. But that's not, but sometimes you can just be, and the problem here is when you become your kid's friend first before you become a parent. I want to think, and I hope all my children think I'm a friend to them, but the number one spot has to be parent. Has to be parent. If it's friend first, then that authority of a parent will never rise. And then you have parents constantly chasing their kids around because they're afraid their kids aren't going to love them anymore because they're trying to put a little discipline down. And when they throw that discipline down, the kid reacts is because you met them as a friend first. And that's what happens here. This same thing, allowing for mistakes, that same thing can happen with a pastor too. You did that? I don't want anyone to know that you go to my church. Mike, get him out of here, right? And we're like, let's just get this person out. We don't want to see him again. They're a sinner. They messed up. Can you believe it? They're not perfect. You know, some churches actually, even though they say, hey, we know people aren't perfect, they still expect you to be perfect, right? Like, okay, I got to stop there. But it's amazing how much performance orientation comes down to identity. And that's why you have to understand your identity. And your identity comes down to the fact what Jesus was talking about to Nicodemus when he says, if you want to come into the kingdom, you have to be born again, or you have to be born from above. Like that's one of my favorite revelations, not famous, one of my favorite revelations is I'm a brand new creature because I was born from above. So I have been born from a place that's not here. Everyone who's received Jesus Christ has been born again from a place that is not here. Born from above. That word again is actually the word above. Let's continue to go. As parents, as leaders, as friends, Rach, if you can go into my office, on my desk, you're going to see it's a half sheet prayer. They're on my desk. I totally forgot to pray through this kind of stuff. And we can have that out at the end. Thanks, babe. As parents, as leaders, as friends, we need to make sure that our responses to our children, our employees, and our friends don't produce an opportunity for them to step into performance orientation. Right? This is huge. Right? We need to make sure that we don't set this stage up. And have I been perfect in it? I don't know. You can ask Adelaide when I'm not looking. Hope not, right? But we need to make sure that if I have, that we're like, hey, we need to be humble and say, I'm sorry, I didn't want to do that. Please forgive me. So let's go back to a parent, to a child, or a minister, to a member with my first paragraph in mind, right? The danger with this, and believe it or not, I've seen this many times. As far back as 19 years old, I can remember already in my head stories as I'm thinking about it. This has probably been one of the most repetitive situation that I've been in all through my life with this kind of understanding, is that if a parent produces performance orientation or encourages a child to step into performance orientation, or a minister does that to a member, and hurt and pain is caused by that, because like I said, the motive behind performance orientation is what? It's fear, it's not love, right? So the motive behind it's fear. And so what happens is that when people get hurt, they project onto God, and I'm not even going to say parents, I'm going to say primarily fathers. So fathers and pastors, they project onto God the hurt that they've encountered in their families. Like that situation, and I always refer to it, I never really go into it in detail. The majority of the people that I know that I've sat in prayer rooms with, not talked all the nitty-gritty, because in prayer rooms you go deep into people's lives that they never ever talk about, haven't talked about in 20 years. But the majority of people would probably have never stepped foot in a church again if they encountered what I encountered. But what did I have growing up that I've alluded to many times? I had a father that showed up for every single sports event, told me he loved me every single day, never said no when I asked him to play, right? Was always there for me. And so when the church leaders did what they did to me and kicked me out, I never projected onto God my anger for what happened. I just went and found a different tribe, so to speak. But this can be true of especially of fathers. If you produce fear, then they'll look at God. I mean, we're just a type and shadow. I'm supposed to be just a type and shadow to my kids of our Heavenly Father. Am I supposed to be him? No. Can I be him? No. I'm not him. I'm not perfect. But same with marriage. It's supposed to be a type and shadow of our relationship with the church in Jesus Christ. And, you know, holding your kid for the first time, you begin to understand the Father's love. The guy that took over for me as a youth pastor at King of Kings, I was talking to him, and he grew up in church but didn't really believe. And I kept on saying, just wait until you hold your son for the first time. And he said as soon as he held him, he said he just broke down in tears, which that's normal. But he said he broke down in tears because he said he had a revelation of the Father's love. And as he was looking at his son and seeing how much he loved him, he began to feel how much the Father loved him. And that's what brought him into church. Just holding that there, brought it there. And so again, you see how they're connected, because he's holding his son and he's like, oh my goodness, like, try not be him, because we're not him, but be that kind of environment for my kids. And that's why when you fail, you have to apologize. But anyways, these are some of the things we need to look for performance orientation. Where does it come from? It comes from lack of affection and laughter in the home. That's a big place it comes from. There's a huge importance on lavishing love in your home. And we're going to find that out. The one I'm writing today is prenatal wounds. And I want to tell you something. I'm so glad I started writing it, because there's stuff in there I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I never even thought about. And some of the studies, even from psychologists that are brought into, I didn't realize the importance of questions of what happened when you were pregnant. You know, if they're dealing with children, tell me about your childbirth, or tell me about your pregnancy. Why? All this stuff is connected. And so prenatal wounds, there's things that can happen. Studies have proven, not my studies, because I'm not It's not my field, not my expertise, right? But studies have literally proven what children are able to pick up in the womb. And so we're going to go over that not next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is burden bearing, and the next one after that will be prenatal wounds. So this is huge. There's a huge importance of the lavishing of love in your home. Well, that's supposed to be if. If we love like Christ, that love will cast out all fear, right? That love will cast out all fear. That's why we have to have that place of love. A home or workplace, right? You're given 10 tasks. You do 9 amazing. And in the one you come a little short, that will be the one that's always talked about. Can anyone relate to that? But what about the other 9? Dad, mom, teacher, pastor, whatever. What about those? I did great. You came a little short in the one, son. Well, you're a disgrace to me, right? And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I got 90% done in my tasks. And so these things, so we have to make sure that we celebrate the right way and encourage in the other. Like, one of the biggest things Rachel and I learned as parenting was never just discipline a kid without explaining why you're disciplining them, right? And it makes it so much harder to do, because then you talk to them, and by that point, the little attitude is gone. And then you still got to carry out the hammer. And you're just like, oh. And you're like, especially little Justice, he's not here, so I can pick on him. He was such a cute kid when he was little. He's like, you understand, son? I got to do this because what you did, you understand? Right? And you just like, oh, I'm the worst dad in the world. But there was all this communication, right? You had to do it. But he knew he was loved, and I never just reacted out of reaction, right? You can't do that. It's dangerous to do that. Conditional love, so lack of laughter in the home or affection. Conditional love, parents unintentionally, what I talked about before, showing more love to children that are high achievers. Why can't you be like your brother or your sister? Has anyone ever heard that growing up? Thank God I'm an only child, so I have not. But maybe some people have heard that growing up. Why can't you just be like them? Why can't you just be like that? Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. And that can produce, I'm not saying 100%. Again, none of this is just, if it happens, you automatically qualify. I'm just saying that these are where it can come from. And if you've had this situation, you most likely will struggle with some degree of performance orientation. Unwise discipline that sends the wrong message, right? And so we have to really be thinking of that. Just sometimes, another thing we learned all the time too, this isn't really discipline, but save your no's for when it really counts. So you're not a parent that's always saying no. So if you say yes, 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 unless it needs to be a hard no, but if you're always saying no, then there's going to be more rebellion because there's no freedom. But if you're only saying no when you have to, then it can produce a healthy relationship. Anyway, so these are places I want you to think of it. So what as you can see where we're ultimately going here, and I got about 5 minutes, 2 more slides, is and before I want to worship, is I want you to start thinking like all these things I shared, like, do I struggle with these? And go back to the building block of where that came in and begin to forgive that person and step into freedom and experience life without performance orientation. My goodness, the air is so clear there. Oh yeah, 4 more places. Family values. You have to act a certain way to be a part of this family. I've never heard that, but I've literally heard people that have told me that. They were expected to be a certain way. That can happen, and I hope it doesn't, but even to PK kids, they always, the PKs, pastors' kids have a certain way they have to act. Maybe you had a message given to you when you were younger, right? You have to be this. It can't be the overall message. It's okay to toe the line, but it can't be the overall message. Position in the family, right? Again, I'm an only child, but if you have siblings, competition, comparison, or you get into a new job and they put you together and make you compete, it's not good. It can be introduced through a boss, it can be introduced through a girlfriend, a boyfriend, but mostly performance orientation, the child has learned it in the formative years as they grow. Formative years are anywhere between 2 and 16 years old, formative years. Recognizing fruits of performance orientation, again, not obviously or not 100%, but they don't have their own center of security. No one in the family of a PO rests. So if you have a family that's always go, someone in there has performance orientation, 100%, if it's the whole family. The need to succeed because it affects their worth, not just because they want to, because it affects their worth. Afraid to try new things. Why? What if I fail? They won't like me. Need to be complimented. Then they won't believe the compliments that are given, that are given. I've encountered that before too, when people just won't receive the compliments. Why? Because they've been beaten down their whole life. They can't. They don't know how to. They're expecting you to be like, you could have done this better. Right? Good work, but then there's the big but, and the but is what they could have done better. Often has suppressed anger. Can't receive criticism because you've heard it your whole life. You don't have your bandwidth. You don't have any more bandwidth for criticism. Compulsively defensive. Why? Because you have to be defensive because you've always had someone poking at you your whole life. So you're always on the defense. You're just, no matter what happens, someone could look at you just an interesting way and you're like, what? Right? Takes responsibility for everything. Can't say no. Performance orientation. Always overwhelmed. Not always performance orientation, but it can be a symptom of it. Demands performance. Tends to blame others and ministers to others but cannot be ministered to. Okay, last verse. And then we're going to put up the prayer. And then Rachel will hand it out. This is actually what's on the screen is going to be on the paper this time. Right? So Proverbs 29:25 says this. Fear and intimidation, and I put in parentheses of people, that's the context. Fear and intimidation is a trap that holds you back. But when you place your confidence in the Lord, you'll be seated in the high place, which is this, and that high place means secure place and exalted place. Right? So we need to ask the Holy Spirit who has helped us step into striving, and we need to go back to that place and release forgiveness and ask the Lord to bring healing into our life. But go back and acknowledge, Lord, I accept tonight that the foundation of my life is going to be because I'm a son and a daughter. And I am a son and a daughter because you loved me. While we were yet sinners, God loved us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. See what love the Father has for us, right? All these verses about love. I am a son because I am loved by God. You are a son or a daughter because you are loved by God. Now I'm going to put this prayer up, and then I could call up Adelaide and Justice, please. And Rachel's going to, Adelaide and Jack, sorry. Jack and Adelaide, thank you so much. It started with a J. And I'll just read it out loud, and then we will maybe just kind of throw them on both ends of the aisles and go for it. Thanks, Robert. So, Lord, I have come to see my performance orientation. I confess to you that although my head believes salvation is by grace, my heart drives me to earn favor, to be good enough to present myself to others and to you. What a line, right? I admit that I cannot change myself. The fear of not being accepted or loved is so overwhelming, it puts me into gear and I begin performing again. When acceptance is given with no strings attached, I cannot receive it. I ask you into my heart to do the work in it for me. Bring my striving to death. Some of us have to bring our striving to death tonight. I want to rest in your love. Help me remove the hindrances that I've erected which prevent me from entering into your love. I accept my identity as your child. Help me learn to live that identity in my daily life. Help me to feel, to know within me that success is simply being your child. Help me to be like you, Lord. So I want us to do today is, you have the other prayer, you don't have to do it perfectly, but I want you to really take a moment as we step into a moment of worship and be like, Lord, where am I striving and who did it come in from? Could be multiple sources. What I'm asking you today is forgive and release them and then step into this prayer and begin to walk in freedom.